Hey everyone, Dave Hagan here. Are we wearing you out with all this talk about financial wellness? That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast. We're coming to you as always from beautiful downtown Van Nuys, just outside of Los Angeles. With me today, Mr. Brian Reed. Brian, welcome.
Good morning, David.
Always good to have you here. Always good to see you. So, I was thinking about all the things we've talked about in the last year, all the things we're trying to get our listeners to think about or do or da-da-da-da-da. And maybe they're getting a little overwhelmed and they're thinking, wow, I don't got time to do all this. What do you think?
It's a lot of information. I mean, we're kind of hammering some of the same points over and over again at times. So it's, hopefully not too overwhelming, but at times maybe you just got to go back and kind of summarize again and reflect a little bit.
Yeah. No, I was looking at some of the episodes from the last year. I've got a list here, and there's a lot of stuff we covered in a year. In episode 104, we're talking about know your flow, and we're saying, hey, look at your cash flow, what's coming in and out. Well, I mean, that takes some time. That takes some thinking. That takes some creative thought process. In episode 110, we're talking about now what? You got rid of your debt. You got your emergency fund. You're putting some money into savings. You're putting some money together for retirement, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now what? And we were saying, hey, create a plan. Well, that takes some effort. That takes some thought process. That takes some planning. In episode 113, we're talking about credit cards. And I know what you're going to say.
What kind of credit card?
I know the black card.
The black card.
Oh, I love that credit card. Would never get it, but man, I love that credit card. So we're talking about, hey, shop around for credit cards if you're going to have one even at all, or maybe you just want to have a debit card. But I mean, that takes time, even though there's websites that now compare the cards. That takes time. In episode 116, we're talking about the due dates on credit cards, and we're saying study your statements. Look what people are putting on your account. Figure out when the payments due. Well, that takes a lot of time. I remember you brought in the fact sheet on the black card. And it was like 4 or 5 pages long. Remember the whole discussion we had about font and number
font
of pages?
Size and yeah.
I mean, that takes time. I mean, when are you supposed to eat, right? We talked about in episode 123, how you doing? We said, let's take some time to reflect on your year and halfway through the year, how you doing? And that takes some time. We were encouraging people to go out, take a walk, sit down in a quiet room. Wow, that takes time. In episode 128, we're talking about who's driving. Are you driving your car in theory, in figuratively speaking, or is someone else driving your car? And we're talking about who's
making your life choices.
That's right. Yeah, we talked about the blog and from Seth Godin and some of these things. Who's driving? So we wanted everyone to reflect a little bit on who's driving, who's calling your shots. In episode 129, we're talking about the 5-hour rule. Remember that? We're talking about 5 hours, things that Warren Buffett and Jack Ma and Bill Gates, Thomas Edison do. Take 5 hours a week to sit back and learn something, read something. Well, now that's another drain on people's time. In episode 132, we're talking about cutting the cord. So we're saying analyze your media feed, your TV feed. Look at your bill, figure out other ways to get the same content so that people don't take advantage of you. I mean, that takes time. In episode 133, we're talking about things that successful people do. And we're talking about studying and modeling successful people. And we spent some time talking about that, but that takes time. In episode 138, we're talking about ready to close. We're talking about end of the year. How'd you do? Did you pursue your goals? Did you accomplish your goals? Let's talk about that. That takes time. In episode 141, we talked about catching fire, and we talked about the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, and we were talking about ways to minimize expenses. Well, that takes some thought process, and we're getting people, or hopefully getting people, to think about this in an otherwise Kardashian world, but we want our people to be smarter, more reflective, more successful. In episode 142, we were talking about an attitude of gratitude and how it's important to have gratitude and feel that, but it takes time, In episode 121, we're talking about personal goals. Actually, episode 201, we're talking about personal goals. And episode 202, we're talking about setting goals and thinking about your tombstone statements. And, that takes time. And the whole time you're going, oh, the Kardashians are on in 30 minutes, Episode 205, we're talking about small changes to your financial plan, your life plan, that would yield big benefits. Episode 206, meditate daily. Well, now we're saying, hey, 20 minutes.
Something else that you need to be doing.
Something else. We're cluttering up people's lives here. 207, this year, we're talking about who are your 5 friends, and you're going to be like your 5 friends, and do you want to cull that group of people a little bit? Episode 208, we're talking about your mindset and what you're thinking. And that takes some reflection to think about what you're thinking, So we're using up people's time. We're suggesting all these things. And I'm wondering, Brian, does that kind of wear you out a little bit?
It can. As you were just, reading all the things that we've talked about, or that you've talked about. And I was kind of reminded of something I read about Bruce Lee and the martial arts. And he had, said that it's starts with there's a punch, a kick, and a block. And you start with that. Those are the 3 things. But then you get into all the crazy kicks. So there's a half moon, crescent, roundhouse kick. And then there's I triple dog dare you block. And then this, but then at the very end, he brings it back around again, in that they're all just the same. There's a punch and a kick and a block.
Right.
And those are the 3 things. And that's what I kind of felt like when you were talking. It's like there's all of these things that are involved in financial wellness. But in the end, it really kind of just goes back to your 5 steps.
Yeah. Or even more basic than that. Have no debt, live on less than you make, and have a plan with the surplus. I mean, it's not much more than that. But if we just talked about that every week, it would get kind of boring.
Yeah.
These are different variations on a theme, or variations or enrichments on that theme. But man, it does add up, Now, if any of you listeners haven't heard any of these things that we talked about, go back and check them out. They're on the website. They're on the YouTube page. They're on they're in iTunes. So go check them out if there's anything that's interesting or something catches your eye. But wow, there's a lot going on there, and that's okay. That's okay. I mean, you certainly can't do all of that. And that's really what I wanted to get to today. We talk about all these things to do, and you can't do them all. It makes me tired just thinking about it. And I had to think some of this stuff up, right? No one could do all these things. No one could be that thoughtful and forward thinking, and that's okay. Our goal is to give you a basket of tools, a number of things to kind of pique your interest, and you can choose which one of them work for you. Last week we were talking about getting up in the dark, and Brian said, hey, try it out, check it out. A couple months ago, well, maybe a month ago, we talked about this whole meditation thing. We said, hey, try it, see if it works for you. Some things you'll like, some things you won't. Some things won't even work for you. but it's our job to give you the biggest basket of tools and try and encourage you to try and check him out so that you can put together your toolbox, what works for you. Over the years, I've studied and talked about personal development. I've listened to people that talk about personal development, personal excellence, financial wellness. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I find it interesting, and I've studied it. And I've listened to people like Earl Nightingale and Zig Ziglar and even Tony Robbins. I even went to see Zig and Tony at a couple of events, and I like to study their speaking style. It was extremely, extremely interesting.
I didn't know that you had gone to see Zig and Tony Robbins. It's Robbins, right?
Tony Robbins, yeah. No, Zig was quite a while ago. Well, they both were quite a while ago, actually.
What was so interesting? How was it?
Well, we drove to Orange County to see Zig, and he's been around forever. And he's from Texas, and he's got kind of a drawl, or as we say out here in California, he's got an accent, right? And he's kind of sly to build, and he kind of just weaves these stories back and forth. And it was so interesting because he flew in that morning. Someone else promoted his presentation. They must have paid him a flat fee. So he gets on a plane in Texas. He comes out and he starts talking, and he talks for, it was like 52 minutes. And he says, now we're going to take a break. And so for 8 minutes, he pauses, and people line up with his books, and he signs the books, and writing stuff about the people or writing in their name in the book. And after 8 minutes, he finishes the last signature. He turns to the audience and he hits his next mark. I mean, it was incredible what his focus was. And I'm sure he'd been giving these, telling these stories for years and years, but he was right on point, right to the minute. And to be able to basically change channels from signing books and saying hello to people to hitting his next mark was amazing to me. And he was doing it without notes. I mean, a lot of speakers today, they'll have their notes projected on the back wall of the room or on a monitor, or, a Tim Cook and the folks at Apple. You don't realize it when you look at their product reveals, but they've got monitors low, and they're working off of monitors. And Zig was doing this from memory, hitting the mark, keeping a room full of people from California interested with these stories about him and his life experiences. And he refers to his wife as the redhead, and these little folksy little stories, and people were eating it up. Fascinating to watch. And a lot of his stories are common sense, human nature kind of stories, but phenomenally interesting. Now, Tony was a different thing. Tony was in a big auditorium, and he had music piped in, and he was drinking from a shake or whatever, and he told us later it was like a fruit frappe, and that's how he kept his energy going, because he's up there just buzzed out of his mind on sugar, I'm sure. But I mean, a really good talker, very interesting guy, and he would take a break, and people would line up, and he's a very gifted presenter, and he's got a lot of optimistic things to say. Didn't take it all in, but it was interesting to see. So, it seems to me you don't necessarily internalize or take in someone's entire philosophy. I mean, I didn't become a Zigite or a Tonyite, but you watched it and you listen and you pick up a couple of stories and you choose parts of this that you take with you. And I'm hoping that's what the listeners do. They listen to what we have to say, and maybe parts of it resonate or work for them. Some of the stuff over the years, I just, didn't pick up. When I was watching Tony, he had the California grapes come out, and they're dancing to I Heard It Through the Grapevine. I don't even remember why they were there, but he's got everybody dancing in the aisle, and I'm a lawyer, right? So I'm going, oh, no, I'm not doing this. My tie isn't straight, and I'm not going to be dancing in the aisle with whatever. Or, he said, well, I want you to get to know the person next to you and, massage their back real quick. And I looked over at this guy. He goes,
you can get sued for that now.
The guy goes, don't even think about it, fella. And I go, yeah, me too. Not going to happen. Deepak Chopra, is a really amazing, thought-provoking kind of person. And he's amazing at what he does. It just never resonated with me. It just didn't click. And that's okay. Everyone's going to resonate with parts of what people do, or maybe not resonate with them at all, and that's okay. The idea is get as much exposure as you can to these kinds of things, and pick what works for you. I think the point is pick and choose. Our job is simply to give the people the tools and give them something to think about. If we can make them laugh a little bit, hey, that's even better, right? It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
So what's your favorite? I think of all the tips that you've given and the thoughts that, the ideologies, or, what's resonated the most with you?
First of all, I was surprised when I went over the list. I hadn't really looked at the list before of all the stuff we talked about. I was really surprised about the breadth of stuff that we had talked about, and how that so many things relate to, financial wellness. But I think my favorite thing was the show that we did on meditation, because I've been thinking about that, doing that on and off for a lot of years, and a lot of things just came together to make that a really interesting show in my mind, a powerful show in my mind. And I enjoyed probably doing that show as much as any. How about you?
Your
See, we didn't
dogged determination to always have a plan. I think that's just incredibly important in life, is to have something written down so you can see it and it's tangible and it's just like a map.
Yeah.
And at the same time, if it's a map in pencil, you can always change it and adjust and figure out what works, but you got to have a plan.
And thinking back over the year, I think the modification or adjustment thing has kind of been a theme for you, that, hey, things are going to change over the year, and you can certainly change them, modify them.
Yeah, the only constant in life is change. So you got to be diligent, looking at your budget, adjusting as necessary, still living, got to live, but also, aware of, where your finances are at, and not being afraid of looking at the numbers. Right. Find out what it is, where are you? Right. And go forward.
Yeah. Interesting to hear your answer, because we didn't talk about our answers before the show. We knew that we were going to talk about, hey, what's your favorite? But I had no idea. So interesting to hear you say that. And we had some fun along the way too. I mean, we talked about some fun stuff. We had we kind of yucked up the black card a lot and made fun of that, but that was fun.
I enjoyed making fun of you in the Tesla. Well, another comment about the Teslas.
I guess me and Tesla's kind of an easy target.
It is. It really is the low-hanging fruit.
But this week, Elon finally came out with the $35,000 car that he'd promised, and I hear people are out there buying them. That's kind of cool.
Are you going to go get another one?
No, I'm not. The $35,000 one is, while it's very affordable, it's a little basic. Some of the accoutrements on it are a little bit basic, but still a fun thing to have. Well, I'm glad that I could, entertain you with my my love of the Tesla.
You amuse me.
Well, there you have it, everybody. I guess the takeaway is that, we're going to continue to try and give you new tools and new things to think about on a weekly basis. And if we can entertain you a little bit along the way, hey, that's great too. Stay tuned. We've got some interesting things that we're working on, and maybe a couple of things that I think are really going to surprise you. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. As an additional bonus, each month, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications. Let's listen in now as Dave answers some emails.
All right, Brian, I think we've got an audio email, so why don't we cue that up?
Hi, Dave. This is Hector from Burbank. I'm recently starting a business, and I wanted to know if borrowing money to get that business off the ground is a good idea. Thanks.
Interesting question, Hector, and thank you for sending that in. It seems to me that we need to know a little bit more about what kind of business you're talking about. But as a general rule, debt is death for a business. While a business is trying to ramp up and develop clientele or customers, to have that monthly payment on some kind of debt is death. The business won't survive a lull or a slow time, or maybe not even the ramp up. So as a general rule, I would say, no, I wouldn't borrow money, to build a business. Now, if it's the kind of business where you're going to acquire inventory or equipment, well, now maybe, because in theory, if things don't go well, you've got something to sell to pay off the debt. You've got something sitting there that could be liquidated. But if the money would be used to, promote the business, to expand the business, definitely not. I mean, so many times I've seen people borrow money for, some kind of promotion company or someone that's promising them that they'll bring in all this new business and customers and blah, 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 blah. And when it doesn't pan out, the promoter's gone and the money's gone, and all you've got is the bill that you need to pay. So, I guess it depends upon the business. I guess it depends upon what you might be acquiring for that. But to promote or expand, that's a really tough borrow, in my opinion. And then it seems to me that, the question behind that is there a business plan? What is the business plan? And how does this fit into that business plan? How's the business going to start? How's it going to grow? Where's the income going to come from? What are the expenses going to be? Blah, 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 blah. But, unless there's a very tight, well thought out business plan, no, I wouldn't borrow money to do anything like that. So, keep your overhead low on the new business where you can. Expand it out of, cash flow. I'd rather see you take less money out of the business if you can, and use the cash flow of the business to expand the business or to make the business start or grow or what have you. But to do it with debt is really problematic and really risky, in my opinion, even with a good business plan. That's my thoughts. Thanks for calling in. We appreciate the question. All right, I think we got time for one more email. We got a written format, Brian?
We do. We have an email here from Sarah and Bill, and it reads, "Hi, Dave. We're buying a new washer and dryer. Should we get the store's credit card for the purchase? It will be no payments, no interest for 1 year. Should we do it? Thanks, Sarah and Bill."
Hey, guys. I did that. I did that like about 20 years ago, and I haven't always followed the complete path of financial wellness. My wife and I, we did that at Sears. I don't know if they're even around anymore, but we did a washer and a dryer actually at Sears, and I don't know that I particularly recommend it. I mean, you could justify it on paper if you pencil it out. But, if you can avoid it, try and avoid it. First of all, I'm sorry that you got to buy a new washer and dryer. That's kind of like a car repair. It's not like you can really appreciate, the new product. Although now these washer and dryers, they've got, steam and they'll whistle and they're internet connected and all this stuff. They come in colors. They're pretty trick actually. But back when we bought our washer and dryer, it was just, give us the white one with the top load and the front load, and that was it. And it was really nice. The first year we were using the washer and dryer and it was new, and the laundry room was a little spruced up, I guess. And you didn't have to pay for it. It's like you got something for free. I really kind of like that. But after a year, when the lint trap is full, it's got a couple scratches and dings on it, and now you got to start paying for it. And that was kind of a bummer to be paying on a used something a full price of a new washer and dryer. So a year from then, it wasn't that much fun. So I avoid it if you can. The other thing is, I know that when I went in and bought it, because I went home and thought about it, and I went back and said, yeah, sign me up for a Sears credit card, to get 10%. I think they even gave me 10% off of the price of the washer and dryer. So, 10% washer and dryer back then was maybe, $1,000, $800. So I saved like $80 or whatever it was. Kind of nice, but now I got a Sears card in my pocket that I never wanted to use. And the couple times that I did use it, now I got another bill coming in the mail that I got to pay. And when I applied for the card, they go, yeah, just, it'll take just a minute. Well, now you're filling out a credit app in the store and they're running your credit check and you're standing there. They go, oh, it'll just be a couple minutes. Well, like 20 minutes later, you're still standing there and going, whoa, I hope my credit's okay. Wouldn't it be embarrassed if I got denied for $1,000 for a Sears credit card? I mean, can you, I felt like, well, what a loser if I can't get even this much credit. So yeah, it was a pain in the neck to set up the account. And, so what did I save? $80 or $100 on paper. I guess it works. But a lot of these accounts, and I don't know about Sears specifically, but if you don't pay it off within a year, the interest starts from, day one. I talked to a friend of mine who had bought like one of these bed with numbers or something. And he showed me the contract and it said, hey, it's a year, no interest, blah, 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 blah. But if you don't pay, it's 29% retroactive from the purchase. So if you miss that payment, ouch. Now you're paying a third more for something that, clearly isn't worth a third more. And you're kind of stuck. And the financing companies bank on the fact that a certain number of people are going to miss that and pay for the other people that got free use of money for a year. So yeah, I'm not really that big of a fan. I really don't want extra credit cards. I'm trying to make sure that I don't have any or, just a couple. And that debit cards, we're really starting to look at debit cards rather than credit cards at this point. So trying to lighten up on that. I remember years ago, someone would be considered wealthy if they went into a department store and out came the wallet from the purse or the pants pocket, and it was filled with credit cards, 20, 30 credit cards. You go, ooh, that person's wealthy. Look at all those credit cards. And now that's not the thing anymore. I'm trying to make my wallet thinner, lighter. I think that people are using fewer credit accounts. Of course, the majors are now usable at a lot of the department stores and what have you, and a lot of the department stores aren't even around anymore for that matter. But I think people are trying to get by with fewer and less. And I think the people that are really thoughtful are paying straight up cash. Pay cash. Because, to part with a couple of Benjamins is a much tougher thing than whipping out the card. And people are, better consumers. We've talked several times about that study that I saw that said that people tend to spend 18% less when they're paying with cash. They become more penny pinchers. And I mean that in a positive way. Penny pinching, I mean a more prudent consumer of goods and services. So, I guess, Sarah, Bill, it makes sense on paper. I mean, I'm hoping that you're not going to, you're not doing that because you need that credit. I'm assuming that you've got the ability to pay. I don't know. I would just pay. You're going to miss out on the discount. In theory, you're going to have that money in the bank for a year, in a savings account, that 2%. I mean, they're kind of lulling you into small amounts of money to then walk around with that kind of a credit account in your wallet, or even to have that credit account. And I don't see any particular compelling need. So I'm not saying absolutely don't do it, but why? Why? You don't need it. Anyway, that's my thought on that. Sarah and Bill, thanks for writing in. We appreciate you sending us a question. Well, that's all the time we have for today here on the Financial Wellness Podcast. I'm here in the studio with Brian Reed, and this is Dave Hagan. And you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.